Hi, I'm Betsy Barbieux. Welcome to CAM Matters. Come join us today as we talk with Jean and Karen from Fort Lauderdale. They are owners in a cooperative association, and we're going to be talking to them about the impact that the show has had on them. Though we're talking about co-ops, everything we're going to talk about applies to homeowner associations and condos too. So come join us.
Welcome to CAM Matters, Condos, Co-ops, HOAs, and beyond. Betsy BarbieuX is an informational leader in Florida on community association living, rights, and obligations. She is an expert on the rights and obligations of owners as well as the association. If you live or are planning to live in the state of Florida, there's a good chance you'll be part of a community association. And by the end of this show, you'll know a little bit more about community associations and why they matter.
Welcome to CAM Matters. I am Suzanne Lynn with Betsy Barbieux, and we're joined by a couple guests today. This is going to be an especially exciting show because this is real life, boots on the ground, inherited a co-op, have to learn how to do it, pivot and change with the times. So Betsy, if you want to introduce the guests, I can't wait to dive in.
We have Jean and Karen Johnson from South Florida, and they have become groupies.
That's true.
That's very true.
I love that. Well, explain your situation. Why did you find Betsy through a magazine? What's your affiliation with her and your history of inheriting this co-op? Let's start there.
Well, back in '64, my grandmother and grandfather had this place, bought it. And then my mom and dad inherited from them, and I've inherited it from my mom and dad. And through the process, I've ended up to be a director and now the president of this association. And in trying to do the right thing, I've gone through and got her magazine through the mail and started reading it in the back and found there was a solution out there to some of the questions that I had on whether or not we were really running this corporation correctly.
Karen, if you had to say how you guys were doing running the meetings and the whole co-op, how were you doing based on what you were seeing in Betsy's content?
Well, we were doing very many things correctly, but and as the president, I feel bad for him because everyone says, I want to do this, I want to do this. And they, it's, I don't think it's so much fun for him, but he's pretty easygoing. He lets things roll off, and
you have to.
But yeah, every time we watched a video, we found out a few more things that we weren't doing correctly, and so it was very enlightening, the videos. And as soon as we watched one, and we read some of the articles, I said, "What's the next video? What's the next one?" And we keep making sure we see the next ones and the next ones. And
Betsy, I'm just going to have you jump in real quick. I'm guessing that they're raving fans of the shows because you were filling a need that they had. I can imagine trying to change, having had this co-op since '64. A lot has changed in 60 years. What are your thoughts about their flexibility and willingness to, do things right even when it's hard?
Well, that's one of the things that has impressed me is that they've been owners, shareholders here, or the family has been since its existence. And here they are trying to do the right thing, and they're looking around for resources. Somehow they find me in this little magazine that's published in South Florida. And then they see that the YouTube channel exists, and so they start becoming groupies of the YouTube channel. And I always invite people to contact me, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. And then finally they decided they would contact me and ask me some questions. They had been seeing things on the videos that they needed to change, they needed to implement, and they said they took a chance on calling me or emailing me, and which is not a chance at all. I thoroughly enjoy it. And we've had this email, phone conversation for over a year, maybe almost even 2 years that we've been talking. And a couple of months ago, I suggested to them that they attend a trade show so that they could see how big the industry is and how many resources there are to help. And I said, the best trade show, I'll get in trouble from somewhere, but the best trade show is our CAI Central Florida trade show in Orlando. So they said, well, we're just going to come on up. Can we meet you there? Will you be there? And so we met up last Friday, a week ago. We met up last Friday and chatted, and they were so delightful and so complimentary. I said, will you be on the show? And I'm just going to ask you to shamelessly promote the show. But they were telling me about the board training class that they attended at the show. And Jean or Karen, you want to tell them?
Go ahead.
Tell our audience what you said.
Well, they let us, it was kind of hilarious, put on by Becker, and they had we call it the peanut gallery, all the people that aren't on the board, and I'm one of those people too. And they would shout out during the meeting, and the board would say, you can speak at the end, you can speak at the end. And but they were sitting in a panel style, and I said, I got to ask a question. They came over with a microphone, and I said, why are you sitting in a panel style? Betsy said, you should be sitting facing each other, and you're not speaking to them, you're talking to each other. And the attorney said, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So
what she left out was they were having a mock board.
Yeah, it was a mock board
in the class. It was a mock board meeting. So she was part of the audience, the heckling owners audience, and then she just corrects the attorneys there and says you shouldn't sit like that.
Betsy says you have to do it this way.
Betsy says, like, oh no.
I assume most people knew who Betsy was when you said Betsy says.
They even knew who she was too, because we stopped at their booth. Everybody knew who she was, and people took her class and oh, we love Betsy. I'm like, we love Betsy more than you even know.
Betsy, I'm guessing it's because you're filling the need of people. You're not famous just because you're beautiful and smart. I mean, they got a problem and you got answers. They feel like you've saved them and at least answered some issues.
Well, I'm certainly not a savior, but there is a better way to conduct your board meetings. There is a better way to communicate with your owners. And without knowing why you have meetings and why on earth are owners allowed to come. I mean, that to me is the most bizarre part of the law, because nowhere else in the business world do the stakeholders of an organization come to a board meeting. Nowhere. Wow. Nowhere else in the business world. But yet, and that's too long of a story to tell here, but there is a reason as to why owners get to come to board meetings. But now it just has run amok. Mm-hmm. And there really is a way to bring more decency and order and decorum to your board meetings if you really understand the purpose of the board meeting to begin with. And I think that's what Jean and Karen have been trying to do is to bring the board meetings back to or around to their original purpose. And Jean, are you being met with some resistance?
Oh yeah, we do get quite a bit of resistance because everybody wants to talk like they have in the past. They feel that they have a decision in this when really it's the board's decision. And they feel they can speak up and change our mind at the meeting. And it's almost like you want to say, if you want a decision, run for the board next week. If you want a stake in making the decision. And we need more people to run for the board. We have a hard time matter of fact, this year, we just had the 5 people that put their name in. There was nobody else that wanted to run.
Election.
Yeah. So, yes, we do run into some problems.
And you have a small community.
Yes.
We do.
Remind me. Remind me how many units?
We have 20 units,
Shares.
and
That's what I thought. Yeah.
a lot of the units, they've been here for more than 20 years. The owners, they've been here a long time. So it makes it difficult to change their way of thinking because they've been here a long time. A new owner, you could probably sway them, but the old ones, they've always talked, and in the past, we never had board meetings. The president just, did what they wanted to do, and that was that. Where now we actually have a board meeting, learning this process from Betsy and conducting it semi-right. We'll get better eventually.
He's too nice.
And so that's how that goes.
Betsy, would you say that the issues that that Gene and Karen have are really typical as you start out, like your early, followers, the board, not running meetings, right, and having people shout out and try to change minds during the meeting and things like are they on the steps of what you see as really a typical pattern of getting on the right path?
Yes, I had the opportunity to go speak to actually a co-op group of owners, shareholders, and board members. I was invited last week to a board meeting, and what that board was trying to do is exactly the same thing that Gene has been trying to do, and trying to implement some of the things, the procedures for conducting the meeting, and trying to make it more concise, make it more productive, avoid all of the yelling and shouting and talking all over each other, and conducting business rather than just a free-for-all Q&A that amounts to nothing. And these co-op owners were in an uproar over the changes that the board had made. So the board said that they wanted me to come and explain to them why the board was making these changes. And so I got there and said, I'm the reason for your board changing their procedures. And part of it was the way they were seated. The owners wanted them in a panel style so that it was a Q&A session. And that is not the purpose of the board meeting. It is not an informational meeting. It is a meeting for the board to meet eyeball to eyeball to get their business done. It's not an informational meeting. And what I did was tell them the history of the creation of the law. And when I told that story, that actually is probably season 1, the first 2 shows, is the history and the reason why we have corporations and boards and the meetings the way they are. When I told them that little history story, I stopped and let the shareholders and the board make comments. I said, so do you like what I've said, or do you agree with what I've said, or don't agree with what I've said? I said, some people don't like what I've just said. And the ones who were the most resistant, even some board members were resistant to the changes that the other board members wanted to make. When they heard my story of the history, the reasoning, they went, oh, so these board meetings are not for the owners. I said, no, the board meetings are not for the owners or the shareholders. They're for the board. And we have a very unique law in Florida that allows the owners to come. And then the owners may make a comment, not Q&A, comment on an agenda item. So it's supposed to be very orderly. There's no free-for-all.
So we're going to take a break here. And when we come back on the other side, I want to talk about next steps for people who are watching this that go, I'm in the same situation as this couple. We need to get law and order with our board. What are some of the next steps? What are some of the classes? Where do we go from here? Let's do that right after this.
Are you ready for a new career? Do you have skills or interest in management, real estate, construction, maintenance, accounting, strategic planning, project management, budgets, human resource management, lawn and landscaping, pool services, or any other expertise needed to operate a community association? If you do, community association management could be for you. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at Betsy at floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Florida Community Association Management continues to grow. Career opportunities abound.
And welcome back to the show. I'm Suzanne Lynn with Betsy BARBIEUX, and Jean and Karen, actual followers of Betsy, because they're trying to learn new ways of helping the community to just do better. And Betsy, will you just kind of remind us, they have a co-op, but talk about the other communities that apply to what we're talking about today.
They are a co-op, and they're a very old co-op, established in 1964. And one of the main challenges and how we got connected was because of meetings and meeting procedures. So the things that we're talking about with them do apply not only to co-ops, but also to homeowner associations and condominiums. So the meeting procedures, the meeting laws, statutes are pretty much all the same for all three. So even if you're not a co-op, you can join in to our conversation and know that these procedures apply to everyone.
Betsy, we've been looking back at them kind of taking over, becoming, on the board and the president. What does the future look like? How would Jean keep growing and learning? Are there classes? Where do you suggest the next steps would be?
Well, certainly he can take more classes, and the trade shows are a good place to take classes. They're free. You've got a whole lot of other things that you can do. There are trade shows all over the state of Florida that are particularly just for our industry. So there are those. The local attorneys in their area, they're in the South Florida area, and the local attorneys that represent condominiums, co-ops, and homeowner associations, those classes are free. A lot of them now are online. So many people during the pandemic stopped doing live in-person classes, so they're online. And so you can just sit at home and take a class. The magazine, the journal, and the property management magazine that they found me through, you can see advertisements for your industry experts in there. So that will help. And of course, keep watching Cam Matters. We have a new show every month. And and I do welcome emails and phone calls.
Absolutely. Yeah. You talk about it almost every week. Please do this. Jean and Karen, I want to go back because the condo or the co-op is in Fort Lauderdale. When there was that disaster with the condominium, did that kind of change things? Were you part of the co-op when that disaster happened? And what were your thoughts on that? And moving forward, were you like, we got to make sure we're doing things right. This is life and death now.
Right. Well, one of the big things is insurance. It's gone up, and trying to predict what the insurance cost is going to be and have it, budgeted properly. And we're all guessing. I think everybody in Florida is guessing, So we have to go through that. That's a huge endeavor.
I wondered who's responsible for that. You did an episode, Betsy, but 98 people perished and due to neglect, right? Or
it could be.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's been a final determination yet.
Yeah, sorry. It was probably many things, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, the fact, Jean, before we started the show, you said that this has given you confidence, like working with Betsy and seeing the shows and learning more, to put a stake in the sand and just go, no, this is not proper. This isn't, we're going to do it the right way.
Right.
Like you're a man of conviction and confidence now because of the shows and Betsy.
Right. It was just actually, we just watched one of your shows with Bob Lloyd, I think it was. And he came up with processes, right, that drove the decision-making for the board. So we've come up with the same thing. We have a to-do list or a list out there that needs to get items taken care of. So we've set certain processes to take care of.
What else Betsy taught us, besides a lot of things, at the annual meeting, there is no board members at the annual meeting. And so you don't conduct board business there. And we were doing that incorrectly. We had all the maintenance items on the agenda for the annual meeting, and that was not correct. And so
If I can jump in, the annual meeting and the board meetings are for different purposes. The annual meeting for the membership, there are really only 4 things that members vote on, and there's only one exception that's different for homeowner associations, but for condos and co-ops, you vote on amendments. The members or the shareholders vote on amendments. They vote on material alterations and substantial additions. They vote on some of the things having to do with reserves and moving money, or at least until January 2025, they can do that. And then they also can vote on raising or lowering the financial reporting requirements. Other than that, the members and the shareholders do not get involved in the daily operations and maintenance of the community. That's for the board. And if you think about it, it's a members' meeting. The annual meeting is, which hopefully is only one time a year that you have to gather them together. The board members are members. The officers will have roles at the membership meeting, at the annual meeting, but there's no collective authority that the board has, so there is zero reason for them to sit together. And they shouldn't. They have no collective authority, so there's no reason to sit together. If you do, you're going to end up sitting in a panel style, and now it looks like a Q&A. And it is not an informational meeting. It's a time to get business done. Now, what I'm not saying is don't communicate with your owners. That's not what I'm saying. I want you to communicate with your owners, but I think with internet, email, Facebook groups, all kinds of things that media that we have to communicate with owners, it does not need to be done at the meeting. And so the board meeting then is to handle all of the maintenance, violations, other to-do list, as Jean says, to handle those things that are the responsibility of the board. That's what the board meetings are for. They're not for giving information.
Betsy, when I hear these two talk, I hear relief, confidence, gratefulness for the information. I mean, to not be screamed at, let's just use that as an example. That you've really helped to, move them forward in a big way. Are there any legal consequences for people who maybe haven't been educated on this? What is it? Does ignorance, is that bliss? Does that hold up in law? I didn't know.
Well, I don't know. There would be several kinds of ignorance. There's willful ignorance, but in the case of like the collapse of the condominiums, if there is willful ignorance there where you just know that things need to be maintained, but you just choose not to do it, time will tell as to what kind of liability there is. Making mistakes and to stupid sometimes decisions is not illegal. It just is unproductive and just counterproductive to the things that need to be done.
It is the responsibility of the board and the president to know a lot of these things.
It is, and in Jean and Karen's instance, they don't have a manager. Oh. So there is a lot that falls on each board member. They will have maintenance tasks. They will have walk around management tasks to do, and they will be the primary contact for the owners. So they don't have a manager. If they had a manager, hopefully the manager would be telling them the same thing that I'm telling them, and suggesting that they try to implement. But when they referred to Bob, who was in a previous show, he implemented a lot of internal processes and procedures so that the board knew how it should communicate with itself and the board knew, and the owners knew how the board would communicate with them. That is typical of any other kind of business. Any place else we have ever worked, we were probably given a policy manual, and that policy manual is how you communicate internally with each other, and the policy manual also says how do you communicate with your customers, the people that you serve. Our industry, for some reason, it just goes right over our head, and we just don't even have those policies and procedures in place that the statute says you can have.
Wow. Well, this has been a great show. Do you have any final thoughts, Carrie?
Sharon?
I don't. I'm grateful because we've got, new procedures in place, like you said, Betsy, and it makes it real easy now to draw the list. It also says, send us an email. We'll put it on the list. We have the list that we go over with the board members, and we choose, we get quotes. So we are the manager. Well, kind of, you're the manager too, Betsy. You just don't know it.
No, I'm not the manager.
We refer to you, and then that's how we get the answer. But we go through those now, and I think that we're on the right course.
Another thing you taught us was the annual meeting date chart. Now, I don't know why anybody else didn't come up with that.
Huge.
And yeah, that was extremely helpful. And
don't you love that chart? I just love that chart. I sent one to somebody today.
And big vote, little vote. People are always going, well, is it all the people here or is it all the shareholders?
Right.
There's always questions on that. There isn't anything we didn't take to use out of your videos. And I even quoted you in one of my newsletters that you trade off your rights to do what you want with the property for the rights of having the common amenities, right? You said that in one of the videos. I posted it.
Yes, I did.
Betsy, they're listening. You're making a difference.
She is.
I mean, this is amazing.
Oh, Jean and Karen, I thank you so much. You were so great for my ego, and I hope that our other listeners will get some benefit from your testimony. So thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
you're welcome. Thank you.
That was fun. And if you're watching this, we would love for you to give us a good rating. That really goes a long way. And for sure, share the information with other community leaders and people sitting on boards or just owners. This information is so vital and so important. We thank you again for joining us for this episode of CAM Matters.
Thank you for listening to CAM Matters. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Information provided on this show is general in nature and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact a licensed attorney for your specific situation.